Hello and welcome to today's episode, which is all about making gluten-free gnocchi. Again, last weekend I did a gluten-free gnocchi video for you. Really happy with how they came out. Very tender and toothsome. The dish looked incredible in the photos. I'll stick one in for you. And then when I came to edit a couple of days ago, the audio hadn't recorded. I don't know what happened. I checked throughout filming to make sure the bars on the monitor are moving. Everything looked fine. But no, planned on doing a follow-up anyway because I wanted to do some kind of flavoured ones. Nothing's going to waste though, because I'm going to use the close-up video to get you to this point, which is where I am now. If you haven't come across gnocchi before, they're a little like Italian potato dumpling, typically using eggs and flour, like wheat flour. So obviously can't have those as a vegan with the eggs. So I thought, well, I'll make my own, and then thought, oh, I'll try doing them gluten-free, just because. Gnocchi have a very distinct shape. They're like a little lozenge, pillowy type shape, and then they've got ridges around it, so then the sauce can kind of flow into the ridges. To get those ridges on mine, I rolled them over the back of 2 forks, but it's a bit fiddly because the forks keep moving, so you have to constantly readjust it, and it just takes extra seconds. Only like 3 or 4, but then when you do 90, it just becomes a bit more time than is needed. So I bought a little gnocchi board. So hopefully that will come out clearly. You can see it's got little kind of grooves in a wooden plank. The set also came with a dough scraper. The little dowel is to make, I want to say garganelli, which is like a little, I think it's a square of pasta that's then rolled around the dowel. So it's a similar shape to penne, that kind of thing. So at some point in the future, I'll possibly make some vegan pasta. I'm not sure if it's necessary, but I've oiled these because I'm going to be using beetroot, tomato and spinach to colour mine. So I just didn't want it to stain excessively, but you know, if you're not so bothered, don't worry about it. Last time I used new potatoes, I want to say Charlotte's, that was the variety, and I boiled them in their skins just in a pan of salted water. This time I've used a combination of baking potatoes and white potatoes. You want to get like a floury variety rather than a waxy type because yeah, it just needs to be fluffy and light rather than the kind of denser texture that waxy potatoes has. I did these ones in the microwave. All I did was chop them down, skins on, and then in a bowl without any water or anything, and then a lid on it. 5 minutes, stir it, 5 minutes, stir it, and then probably 5 minutes more. But just stick a knife in, and if it slides easily, then you're ready to go. And then put them through a potato ricer, which is one of these little gizmos. So it's a similar principle to a garlic press. You fill up the press and then plunge it down like that, and it extrudes it through the holes. The thing I like about the ricer is you don't need to peel it because the peel gets left behind in the chamber. But you know, if you don't have one of those, feel free to peel them and then mash it down just with a masher or a fork. Or if you're not so bothered about the appearance, you could maybe leave the skins on, but I don't know if the skins are going to affect the sort of cohesion of the dumpling. So have a play with that, see what you think. So at the moment I've just got the riced potato, so it's nice and light and fluffy. This is a recipe from ellavegan.com. I will stick the link in the description for you. The recipe states a kilo of cooked and peeled potatoes. This is maybe 1100 grams because when I did the other batch, I had a lot of skin left over because obviously a new potato is completely encased in skin. So I've got a little bit over, but it's easy to adjust. We'll be using 2 different types of naturally gluten-free flours. So I'm going to be putting in gram flour, which is just dried chickpeas that have been ground up. This is a very common ingredient, especially in Indian cookery. So you might see it as besan or garbanzo bean flour will work, that kind of thing. And then we're also going to use tapioca starch. Tapioca is the starch that comes out of a cassava root. I want to say that's called yucca as well. If I'm wrong, I will correct myself. Now a cassava looks a little bit like a sweet potato, maybe narrower and pointier. I've never eaten one as a vegetable. I've only ever had the starch of it. But I have seen a recipe in the Vegan Black Metal Chef cookbook that looks really nice. So I might give that a try at some point. Because I've got 100 grams extra potato, I might have to tweak the powders a little bit as we go along, but it'll be fine. So I'm gonna pop in 125 grams of the tapioca starch. It's a very light, powdery, it feels very soft and fluffy. That's around 1 cup. I'll add half a teaspoon of salt, I'd really recommend sieving gram flour because you get these lumps that are quite firm and hard to get back out again as you're kneading. So we're going to use between 180 and 240 grams of the gram flour. It's just going to be dependent entirely on the type of potato, how wet it is. You know, if you boiled it, it's probably going to need more because it'll be waterlogged. So we'll see. So yeah, I'll do 2/3 and then I'll weigh whatever's left over and then just work that through. And then start bringing this together into a big mass of dough. So I'm kind of using that kind of movement, a bit like a massage, I suppose. Be mindful that you can't test this dough to see if it's salty enough because that gram flour tastes foul. It's really bitter. What we're looking for is for it to hold a shape. So I'm just going to tear a bit off and roll it, see what happens. Yeah, so that seems to be holding up nicely. I've got 83 grams of the gram flour left, so I used about 165 maybe. This is 50 grams of peas and 50 grams of spinach, just chopped spinach frozen. Pinged it in the microwave just to heat it up again. And then I've got 100 grams of beetroot, and I'll also use some tomato puree, tomato paste maybe in the States. Blend those down into purees, blitz them down with a stick blender. It's still very thick and a little bit difficult to puree smooth, so I'm going to add in a little bit of water, maybe 1/4 teaspoon to start, just a little splash, because I don't want to start adding loads of water because then it's just going to have more powder put in. So the greens are mostly pureed. I could probably get it a bit smoother, but I'm running out of patience. Feel free to pass it through a sieve if you want it super smooth, and you can add more water to get it looser, and that'll make it easier as well. I'm hoping the beets will go a bit faster because they're quite wet. Yeah, that was much quicker. So I've split the dough across 3 bowls just to get lots of space to work with. So I'm going to work in the bigger bowl. So at this point here, we've got gnocchi dough. So from here you can then shape it and then start cooking it from there. But obviously I want coloured and flavoured ones. So I think I'm just going to throw it in and then massage it all together. And then I might need to add a little bit more starch and gram flour if necessary, but we'll see. And start working that in. I'll probably have to go in my hands. Yeah, that's just going to take forever. This might not be quite as green as I'd hoped, but at least it will be a little bit, a hint of green. I'm just going to grab a fork because it's next to me, and then just roll it. Oh no, I think that's going to be okay actually. On to the second batch, which I think I'm going to do tomato. Why not? Just in case you haven't come across this tip before, I mean, it's not really a tip, it's a design, but so a tomato puree tube is usually sealed. The end is a spike, so you just put the end in, twist it around, and then it's open. I'll start with about a tablespoon and then see what that does. And because that's much wetter than the spinach, I think I am going to have to add extra starch and flour in, but we'll see. So again, just go in and give it a good squidging. Decided I do want it a bit darker. Just for looks really, because it's not going to taste a massive amount of tomato. Do another tablespoon or so. Now this still looks okay. I don't know if I'm going to need to add anything else in it, because it's holding a big lump. Do the fork test. Yeah, holding well. I've put on a latex glove just to prevent any staining from the beetroot. I just don't want one red hand. Well, I don't want red hands, full stop. But yeah, not a crucial stage, but they are handy to keep, and then you can just wash them off, dry it, and then back in the drawer. Oh, and actually, it's not sticking to that, so that's going to make it much easier. Blob in. Oh, I should have drained that. Well, never mind. Done now. Yeah, okay. So this one is going to need extra, I think, because that's just mush now. I was thinking I'd have to add more powders to this, but I think it might be okay. Just pulling out any lumps of beetroot. So let's see. It's holding its shape. Yeah, and it's holding the ridges well. So I think that's fine actually. So the 3 doughs are all ready to be rolled and gnocchied. Most of the last bag went into the freezer. So I think I took out 18 pieces, maybe 16, so you can see how much you get. To freeze them, I'm gonna arrange them in a single layer on greaseproof paper, put that in the freezer. Once they've all frozen, I can then put them all in one bag. But you need to do it individually like that so they don't stick together. It's time to try the device, see if it works. I hope it does. What I might do is dust a little bit of tapioca starch on my hands, just in case it sticks. All of the recipes I've seen for making gnocchi tell you to section it into equal pieces and then roll those into sausages and then shape each piece like that. Personally, I just find that really inefficient because I'm spending time trying to roll it out and then you have to roll it with more tapioca, so you're adding more starch into it. So I'm just going to do piece at a time. That might prove a mistake, but that's what I'm going to do because it did take a good 5-10 minutes to roll 5 pieces out because it kept crumbling, falling apart. So I've taken a lump of it. It's about a tablespoon, thereabouts. And then I'm just going to roll that into a ball and kind of compress it, make sure it's packed tight, just so it holds its shape. It is a fairly labour-intensive job, but it's easy and it's low impact on your body. So what I'm going to do is take these bowls into the living room and just sit and watch TV while I roll them. I'm going to roast a couple of red peppers in the air fryer and then puree those down with some tomato paste and salt and maybe some cayenne pepper and just make like a pepper paste to go with them. So I'll see you back in a bit when it's dinner time. The gnocchi has all been gnocchied and is ready to have a bath. They've come out really, really well. I'm very happy with those. So I've got a pan of salted water boiling on there, and then I'm going to start warming up some vegan butter because I'm just going to saute them, pan fry them so they get a little bit crispy on the outside. I've also got the red pepper sauce that I made. It's come out really nice. It's a gorgeous, vibrant colour. To make the pepper sauce, I just sprayed whole red peppers with a bit of oil, put them in the air fryer at 205 degrees C for 22 minutes. Can do longer if you want. Once they come out, put them in something that you can then seal closed. So I just put them in a big Tupperware and then just leave them, and then the skins will peel off. Then break it down into a bowl, and I blended it with, I think it was about 1/8 of a teaspoon of salt, 1/8 of a teaspoon of cayenne pepper, and maybe a tablespoon or so of tomato paste, and then just blitzed it down. So feel free to go as intense or as mild on the flavours as you want in this. You can add other spices, maybe some fresh herbs, that kind of thing. I thought about doing brown butter for the gnocchi. You just warm it through over a long period of time on a lower heat, so like 5 of 9. And then it toasts down and gives a really delicious flavour. Beurre noisette, it's called in French. It does work with vegan butter. I did it the other day. Probably wouldn't do it with marge. I don't think there's a high enough fat content or too high a water content. But yeah, but because I've got the pepper sauce, I just thought, well, I'm just putting flavour against flavour. So I thought I'd keep it basic on this one. Time to slide the gnocchi into their little jacuzzi. I don't know if this is necessary, but I just worry that if I chuck them straight in, that's going to aid to them breaking down. So I'm going to lower them in on a spider. So I'll just leave them in probably about 3 or 4 minutes. Just kind of nudge them apart, make sure nothing sticks together. Well, they're not instantly disintegrating, so that's a fantastic sign. So that's a spider. I got this from the Chinese supermarket, so it's quite useful for lifting things out, especially for deep frying, that kind of thing. I found a good kind of technique for rolling the gnocchi, so I put the gloves back on, and that really helped stop things sticking to my hands. And then I just used one finger to pull the dough ball down that whole board, and then flip it if necessary. And that just seemed to work quite nicely, nice and even. Put the remainder in the freezer, so once they're solid, they'll go in a bag. Once the gnocchi are done, they're just gonna rise to the top, so that's when you know they're done. So it's fine, if you have got some that are smaller, some that are bigger, they'll just take different times. So they're all floating, telling me they're ready. And I'm really pleased that the colour hasn't completely faded away. I'll lift them out, give them a little bit of a drain, and then drop them into the butter. I think the tomato ones have come even more vibrant in colour. This is so exciting. And then I'll just pan fry those for a few minutes each side and they'll go nice and golden brown. I've toasted off some pine nuts in the air fryer. I did, I think, 150 for about 10 minutes, shook them halfway through, just to give a nice bit of extra nuttiness. Got some rosemary and sage. The sage is from the last batch, so it's a bit dried out, but I'm just gonna chuck that in for some extra flavour. Why not? And that'll just give some fragrance to the butter. And I can see the texture is wonderfully bouncy. Let's give these a little flip around. It's time to eat. Yes! They lose a little bit of that bright, vibrant colour when you pan fry them, but in my opinion, you get a really nice texture, so the payoff's, it's kind of worth it. So I'm gonna go tomato first, why not? So you can see the texture's holding up really well. It's not collapsing or anything like that, which means, it's not too stodgy or claggy or anything. The texture's lovely and fluffy inside. And I know people talk about not liking gnocchi because it's really heavy and kind of dense. This is just, it's like a pillow. I did have some concerns that putting the veg in there was going to change the kind of integrity of the dough, but yeah, that was unnecessary. So again, it's got that great kind of stability without it just collapsing around everywhere. It's just so light. I guess the lack of gluten just lifts it up a little bit. Yeah, I think I prefer this to regular gnocchi. So again, it's got some yield to it. It's not just like a ball, like a bouncy ball. Ooh. Dunk it in that sauce. I kept the flavours on the sauce fairly, not mild, because it's quite bold flavours, but I didn't start layering loads of spices or anything, so it just helps. You can taste a little bit of the potato, the pea and the spinach a little bit. Yeah, just working really nicely together. And then the beetroot one. So as I'm looking at the camera monitor here, it doesn't look quite as vibrant as it does in real life, as it were. Again, it's got that really fluffy texture. Looks a bit like a hot dog. But yeah, you can kind of see the vibrant pink there, although my light keeps changing. There we go. So yeah, you can see, so if you just have them boiled, that'll be quite dramatic on the plate. In terms of other flavours that you could do, you could puree down some red cabbage. That's got a really vibrant, bold colour. You could do kale. Maybe, if you want to be wild, you could do charcoal. Just be mindful with charcoal that it can block absorption of medication. So don't eat a lot of it every day for a week. Just don't do it. But yeah, as a one-off, if you just wanted something dramatic on a plate, especially with that red pepper sauce. I had thought about putting some basil in with the spinach and pea, but I thought, well, I just didn't want to kind of have such an overwhelming flavour in the dough itself. But you could definitely try that. Maybe do basil or tarragon might be quite nice. And then you could do a creamy mushroom sauce over the top. You could do carrots. That would give a really nice bold colour, although the tomato ones have gone orange, so I think maybe a carrot one might go a bit lighter, but carrots have got such a bold orange, they might be okay. But yeah, let me know in the comments if you do any of them and let me know what you tried out. I thought about stuffing them, maybe with a piece of vegan cheese or, I don't know, just something in the middle. So I might try that at one point. If I don't do it as a video, I'll update the pinned comment for you. So just keep checking back there and you can see all the random things that my brain decides to try. When I initially thought about doing gnocchi, I thought I'd do it as an experiment with you. So trying different kind of powders and doing small batches of each one to see what gave the best result. But in the end, I just found a tried and tested recipe because, I didn't want to waste a load of food. But yeah, I might do that with you in the future. Yeah, I think just do kind of, small little balls of different blends of starches and gluten-free flours and see what provides a good result. Hit subscribe and tap that bell icon if you're also potty about potatoes, and that way you'll get every recipe in your inbox as they land each week.